Hey, I'm Paul Henry. I'm the founder of Bot Dojo and have been helping Miva with some of their AI efforts. Prior to this, I was CTO of ShipStation. Do you guys use ShipStation? All right, sweet. So I started at ShipStation back in 2013, 10-person startup. Knew both the co-founders, and then ShipStation kind of got really big. Got acquired by Tomo Bravo, and so I was a CTO of Octane or Stamps.com for a while, and started to play around with large language models internally. So we had this problem where you had hundreds of thousands of customers, and just a bunch of noisy data, and then how do you deploy that and extract all that information? And so we started to tackle that by trying to read all the customer support emails and all the call transcripts and try to extract information about what problems are our customers having. And so we can build better products, write more documentation and increase deflections. And it was really, really hard with the tooling that we had. We had a lot of hallucinations, a lot of cost you had to manage. And so that was kind of the genesis of deciding to do a crazy AI startup. So anyway, you want to hear about AI again? Okay. So I'm a tech guy, so I'm going to go a little bit into some of the weeds, but I think it's important to understand the capabilities of what these things do, and also when they mess up, why they're messing up. So underneath the hood, even on these video models, large language models are just predicting the next word. And so this is not all heroes wear, 90% is capes, 5% is pants, and there's a random aspect of that. So every time you talk to ChatGPT, if you ask a question, it doesn't always give you the same answer back, right? There's a lot of reasons for that, but part of that is they pick a little random number, and sometimes they will pick pants, right? Depending on how the data is distributed. And so that's why you get these hallucinations, and that's why, all this chaos happens, and it's why it's hard to deploy this stuff in production. So fundamentally, that's how it works. And then at the end of the day, all these different tools, this is how they're actually getting AIs to do work for you. Everybody knows what a prompt is, right? It's what you type in, tries to predict the next word. And so for a support bot, this is exactly what's going on behind the scenes. Here's the prompt, you're a support agent. We go and retrieve information from the support documentation and we just throw it into the prompt, right? And at the very end of the prompt, we say, how do I change my password? And what it does is it looks at the stuff that's in the context of the prompt, and now it can answer it magically with all the machine learning and all that kind of stuff. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. And the reason I have Groundhog Day on here is that every time you talk to these models, they don't remember anything that you said before. Everything they have is in that prompt. And so what happens is you run into issues where when you run out of that context, it forgets things. So if you're chatting with it, and it's like, okay, cool, now that we had this conversation for 15 minutes, I want to ask you something that you had to refer to at the beginning of the conversation, it has no idea because they just chop it off. And so it's Groundhog Day. And so that's a lot of the challenges on trying to get more capacity out of these things, is how do you compress that information so it fits into the prompt. The cool new thing is agents, So what an agent is, if you look at the prompt here, it's the same mechanism that you do when you're answering a question from a knowledge base, except for the LLM, instead of predicting the answer, is predicting a tool call and the parameters you want to pass to a tool, right? And so what happens is behind the scenes, we intercept that. The next thing the AI is predicting is I want to search documentation, and here's my search query, right? And so behind the scenes, the system is taking out that function call, actually making a call to an external system, and just throws the input back into the LLM. So the model has the entire conversation, the return of the tool calling, and therefore it can answer your question. So when we did the demo about asking about your order, that's all it's doing. It's making an API call behind the scenes. We throw it back to the LLM makes another tool call, we throw that back to the LLM, and then as these things get better and better at reasoning, more and more capability can come out of it, right? Does it make sense? Okay. All right, AI has been changing a lot. I used to have long hair before this year doing an AI startup, and it changes every week. So back in 2023, if you wanted to spend $100 for GPT-4 intelligence, that costs 10 cents right now. So the cost of inference is plummeting. And what that does is it opens up more use cases, like I want to listen to every single transcript a sales guy makes or interaction with a support person. I want to extract the customer problem. I want to extract how the agent, worked with the customer. Did they do a good job and all that kind of stuff? That used to cost thousands of dollars back in 2023. Now it's almost free. And then DeepSeek and a lot of these open source models. This thing is almost going to go down to the electricity at this point. Right, and that's why you see like OpenAI and some of these models that raise all this money trying to figure out a moat because eventually your phone's going to be able to run a best-in-class model today, and that's what it seems like it's headed. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of journey of this year about use cases. I'll try not to repeat a bunch of stuff that's already been said, but what is AI really good at? Support. Right? And so what we do at Bot Dojo is when we go to a company and try to like automate support, and we typically do like larger customers where there's a lot of call transcripts, is a lot of times the documentation's all crap, right? And so in order to find that source of truth, we actually read all the transcripts, all the call logs, and extract customer problems and extract what the agents have been saying, the human agents have been saying to the customer. And then we have people review that to get a source of truth. And then we supplement that documentation, generate documentation, and we can get those deflection rates from like a 20% to like 80%, by just doing that process over and over again. Fixed grammar. I can't spell, but now, people wouldn't know most of the time. And then content generation. And, in your guys' space, marketing, it's going to be weird when it's so cheap to generate all this content. How do you differentiate yourself? I almost think it's like influencers are going to be like the moat, humans that have all these followers, because it's just going to be, everywhere. Okay, and so I'll walk a little bit on the engineering side, because I think this is going to also happen across the different industries. So coding assistance, I'm sure you guys have heard about that. It is pretty revolutionary what you can do now with coding generation, and especially with some of the new tools. There's like a tool called Cursor. So you can code by copying and pasting from ChatGPT, but there's other tools where your whole coding environment is powered by AI. And so you're not copying and pasting, it is looking at the file that you're looking at. It is looking at the 3 or 4 files you looked at prior to that. It knows your last 10 changes. And so what it does is it takes all that context of what you're working on, forms a prompt, sends it to the LLM, just like we were doing before. And it's crazy how much it speeds you through. So we're just like a 7-person startup, and the amount of stuff we can do is crazy. I was talking to my CTO, and we were integrating with a new voice platform. And the spec was on the website. We just copy pasted, the raw HTML to the chat and say, hey, I want you to conform to the interface that we're using, and build out this integration for us. And then we let it go, and it's just chugging, it's testing, it's doing all this kind of stuff. And so we were just having a conversation about what the next steps would be after we start working on this. It got done. It worked the first time. Right? And that was kind of an aha moment about how well these have gotten just in the matter of the last 4 or 5 months. Right? So it's going to be very disruptive of what, in the engineering field, but it's almost like the cost is just going to, go down. When I was, I'm going to do another bad analogy. So when I was in Little League, right, our uniforms just had like a number on it. It was like a maroon shirt with a number. Now when you go to a Little League game, you have, you know, videos you can see on your phone. There's like a smoke machine. There's big, loud things. I think that's just what's going to happen. It's like what is capable, the cost of doing all these things is just going to go down. So the smaller companies would just have the same abilities. Okay, and you know, deep research, we talk a lot about that. That's super useful. I use it almost every day. It's not just OpenAI or the new one that came out. They're all kind of doing this. And basically what that is an agent in a loop that just basically goes to the website, gets the information, tries to think about the next step, goes to the website, another website, and does it, and builds a report. We actually been doing that for a while. I wish we would have marketed it a little bit differently. But one thing that we're focused on is internal data. So deep research is really good about the open internet, you know, doing that kind of analysis. But when you have internal data, you have a lot of security concerns. And so what we've been working on is like getting all your Salesforce data, getting all your Zendesk data, getting your, you know, your marketing material, and then have agents being able to query all these different data sources. So you can kind of do that deep research inside your company. And then automation, you know, agents, they do stuff. Okay, and we talked a little bit about video already today, agent swarms. So this is the one thing that when you run into the context window problem, and that's probably the biggest limitation right now for AI, is it's like once you exceed the context window, it just goes off the rails. And so ways you can do that is you can compress data. And that's like, hey, I want you to take all this data, I want you to, you know, compress it down to 2 paragraphs, and now you give that to the agent. Or you can create multiple agents and have them coordinate, and that's what a swarm is. It's like, hey, I have an agent that's really good about answering support tickets. I have one that's really good about understanding our product team's work, their what's in Git and all that kind of stuff, the open issues. And you can kind of tweak these agents to get really good at a corpus of data, and then you can have them coordinate, where you can ask another agent to say, hey, what happened in support last month? What are the top 10 issues? And then what's product and engineering doing about it, right? And so you can, you know, the top agent is like coordinating between those two. And then laundry folding robots are coming. At this, maybe next month, I don't know. It's crazy. So just a little bit about what our platform is. We have a low-code agent builder. So we do a lot of data ingestion into the vector databases to give these agents context. And then we have templates and drag and drop kind of things to where you can orchestrate agents to get things done. And we have, you know, we integrate with a lot of the enterprise systems, and we have all the security things that I did the first week when I started this company is to get SOC 2 stuff going, because yeah, you don't want to just open up your data to these things. So anyway, did I go too fast? Yeah, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I've been living this stuff every day for the last year and a half, so.
I think.
How many of you have had a situation with Miva, even though we're known for having a great support team, where you're just confused on why they don't seem to know what the heck they're talking about? And my experience is we all have that with every company. And so just today, Paul got private access in our own cloud to our Zendesk tickets to give us a level of insight into what's going on in a way that just a person running day-to-day tools of trying to figure out helping all the clients can help. And so what are the kind of things we might learn from this?
It's pretty eye-opening, because like when you have an organization, there's always like the gut feeling of what's going on, right? And so what we've done is like, and it'd be interesting to see what with you guys, but like,
Yeah, when do we get the results anyways? It's like it's like a test
this.
from a doctor.
Yeah, pretty good. So we actually, for some of our clients, we find these things where we just listen, you know, we extract everything that happened that week, right? And then we compare it from the week over week kind of thing. And, you know, actually Octane is now a customer. And we found that like, hey guys, I don't know what's going on, but on the report, it's like multi-factor and a $25 cap for fraud was like blowing up the support ticket, and then no one knew about it, right? There's this like gap between, when a support person is listening to a phone call, they just live in their world, right? And so it's hard to understand what's happening across the board, especially if they're not categorizing it in a particular way. And so with these embedding models, because we can find related content just based on the text of the chat, we can lift up these kind of information to kind of, give you a weekly report, right? Here's some emerging issues that we haven't seen in the last 4 weeks. We didn't find it in the documentation, and it doesn't look like anybody's working on it in Jira, right? So those are the kind of things that you can kind of get from that.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on the type of customer service issues, I mean, if you're like me, you've had this experience where you look back at the week behind you and you're not really sure what you did. And I don't mean it like you weren't being effective, but you're just not sure where 40 or more likely 60 hours went. And if you have the right ability to capture what's happening in your business and then use a tool like we've done with Bot Dojo, which is where our coding bot has come from and where our docs bot has come from, and then what the client-facing AI chatbot will help with, all of this, what's so great about it is that it's all your data in a controlled manner that, there are ways to pay the ChatGPTs of the world, et cetera, to exclude your data from the training. But there's a bit of a trust there. There's a very different game when it's your data in a database you own and control, and then you can actually control the hallucinations. So the first thing we did with Paul was, for years I've been told how much our documentation sucks. And the problem is, no matter how much documentation we made, the same problem came from it. And at some point I was like, well, the documentation's not bad. Like if I want to do this thing and I go look at that thing, it tells me through it and it walks me through it. And what people were really saying when they said this is, I don't know how to find, it's almost like product recommendations. I don't know how to find the document I need at the time I need it. And so ChatGPT was okay at giving you Miva answers, but then sometimes it made one up. It told you the heroes weren't wearing pants. And so we were able to work with Paul, and it was really eye-opening, mind-blowing, if you will, to be able to create a non-hallucinatory bot. And I don't think you might get an answer that's like, hey, I can't answer that. But you don't get an answer that says log into your Amazon account and do something, because it knows Amazon isn't part of this known universe. Any questions for Paul before we let him go? We got like 5 more minutes. This is your AI expert if you want to ask.
Everybody's all AI out. Yeah. About like the latest on AI? Yeah, there's a ton of, I'll send those out actually. There's a couple of them there. I listen to some pretty techie ones. Latent Space is a podcast. It's very engineering-y, but they're on the forefront of everything. So sometimes if you just like go to their website, copy the transcript, get a summary of it, you'll at least know what the latest stuff is, which I do. Sometimes it can be like a 2-hour podcast, so yeah.
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 So I'm curious, the consumer version of AI, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So as a consumer of AI, I'm curious on your feedback on which one of the models is the best. Like, I've been using Grok. How's that compared to ChatGPT? Is one better than the other? Specifically, I was shocked when I queried ChatGPT and said, how current is your information? And it's like a year old.
2023, yeah.
Right, I was surprised when I queried Grok and it said it's up to date as of today because of partially the X API connections, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the whole date thing, what Grok is doing, there's still a date that's probably a year old. But what they're doing is injecting part of the prompt. So whatever you type in there, there's another prompt, there's a system prompt that's in there, and they probably put the date right at the top of it, to do it. One thing about the best model, it changes, right? If you're coding, it's Claude. ChatGPT's pretty good. In a ChatGPT 4.0 Mini, when you're processing a lot of data, it is like 90% cheaper than anything else. So this is really good for like call transcripts, where you're just mountains of data. but it changes all the time. And DeepSeek is pretty good, but it's not good enough to actually replace ChatGPT or Claude. But Llama 4 is, Meta's new AI. Once an open source model is comparable to Claude and ChatGPT, then being able to host all these models on your own hardware is really going to take off, which I think we're probably.
So where do you think we'll be in a year? What's coming?
I think the costs are going to go down. The question really about how it's going to change is if the context windows get bigger. Because if the context, yeah, it's basically the memory. It's the Groundhog Day kind of analogy, right? If it doesn't fit in the context window, then it's just a general ChatGPT model, right? And so, and when you're working with a whole bunch of data, it's going to work great until you hit that limit, and then it just falls over, and it's almost useless. And so there's strategies you can do about summarizing content to try to shove as much context in that prompt, or splitting those up into multiple agents, because you can distribute that kind of thing. But the cost of increasing that context window, unless something comes out next week and changes the game again, is pretty high. And so that's where the limiting force, I think,